Okay. We are in Perek Chaf Daled of Sefer Yeshayahu, and this Perek, while it describes death and destruction, on the other hand, we don't know who. So unlike the previous 10 prakim, where there was a specific, and I'll say a specific group of people that were targeted, whether it was this nation or that nation, in this Perek, it seems to be closed. It describes things that we're not even sure what it's describing. So Rashi, for example, talks about the fact that it's describing Armageddon. And so it's a worldwide catastrophe, a worldwide destruction. The Targum Yonatan says, no, it's a smaller piece. It's just talking about the exile of the 10 tribes. Okay, so it's a very smaller piece of information. According to the Abarbanel, he suggests that it is talking about the Babylonian conquest, the Babylonian Empire, where they were conquering large sections of the world itself. Rav Hirsch says it's talking about the degradation of the whole world, and as a result, HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishing the world itself, not necessarily in Armageddon, not necessarily a conquest by Nebuchadnezzar, definitely not just the exile of the 10 tribes. And along comes the Dat Mikra, and the Dat Mikra says all of these are legitimate theories of what it's about. But if you just look at the pshat of the psukim, it really seems like it's just describing some natural catastrophe, some kind of massive earthquake that was going to occur, and that earthquake would lead to all of these kinds of things. And so we don't really know what it is. What we do know, and that Sofrim points out, is that this is unlike the previous prophecies in the sense it doesn't talk about a path out of this. It seems like this is a prophecy that is describing something that will happen, that not that the Navi is going to be saying you need to do tshuva, but rather he's describing an actual and real consequence that's going to occur in the world itself. Well, we don't, it depends what you say. If you say it's Armageddon, it would be, God forbid, in the future. If you say it's the destruction of the northern kingdoms and their exile, yeah, well, that already occurred. If you say it's describing some natural disaster, well, we got 2,000 years of natural disasters we could pick from. Okay, we really don't know. What's the meaning of Armageddon? Armageddon is a war. In Hebrew, it's called the Milchemet Gog uMagog. It's of two major world powers that battle, and its descriptions you'll find more in Yechezkel, but we've seen it also in Sefer Daniel and in other places. It's a massive battle, world war that is going to occur, that is going to leave massive destruction and death, but following the Armageddon will come the point of redemption. Now, as we talk about, the Gemara talks about this, other sources talk about it as well, that there are two pathways to a messianic era. Pathway one is we're deserving of it, and pathway two is God is going to force it on us. And the forcing it on us is not going to be a lot of fun, but ultimately will occur. And this could fit into it because we do talk about a small group of people who are going to survive. And we talk about a small group of people in this Perek who are going to sing praises to God and things of that nature. The problem is part of the imagery sounds like earthquake. It talks about crevices, openings of the earth, and it talks about noise and shaking. It could also, we don't know. And in fact, there is in Reb Schwab's commentary, so his editors, they were basing them on tapes. The editor, one of them, the editors was David Bechhofer, not the David Bechhofer in Chicago, but his cousin. This is from the family, obviously, of the Breuer family. And at one point, it talks about people who are going to disappear from the earth, and he talks about maybe this is talking about space travel. It's so obtuse, all of these descriptions. It can apply to many different scenarios. And by the way, that might also have been the purpose of the Navi, to describe many different scenarios. The Navi obviously wanted to keep it vague, and why he chose to keep it vague, it could have been what we view as vague was obvious to him and was obvious to the people he was speaking to. And it could be that what we view as vague, he viewed as vague as well, either because he didn't want to go into the details, either because that was the nature of the vision that he had, or perhaps because the nature of his vision was to try to provide this broader application.
Wouldn't it be that that's
He is conveying the vision, but remember, the visions that Nevi'im received, with the exception of Moshe, was what we refer to as Paklaria She'enam Me'ira, was not 100% clear. And there was an element of interpretation within those visions itself. That was the role of the Navi. The Navi is not, as was Moshe Rabbeinu, parroting what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, but rather the Navi was interpreting what he saw and conveying it truthfully, conveying it in a way that faithfully. But there is still, there are times where he doesn't understand what he sees as well, but he conveys that message as well. Now, and by the way, the language he uses, remember, the language a Navi uses is up to the Navi. Okay, it is because it's not a direct conveyance of HaKadosh Baruch Hu like Moshe Rabbeinu. So he chooses these words that he's choosing, and which means that he's able to shape in some fashion that message that he received. We lahavdil elef havdilot, we do this all the time. In the kind of language you use, you can shape people's reactions and people's understandings. So let's get started with the beginning. There's about 5-6 pieces to this parak itself. The first part is just talking about the first 6 psukim are really talking about the destruction of what we would normally consider the rules of civilization themselves. And it starts out, Hinei Hashem, bokek haaretz uvalakam, that God is going to empty out the world and he will destroy it. Now, according to the Dat Mikra, when it says he's going to empty out the world, what it means is there is going to be great death of those who live in the world. And he says these words, while they're very similar, bokek and bokeh, when you look at the word bokeh is to crack. Okay, it's not really to destroy in the same way. You have ka'im. And so you have bokek and bolkam, but bokek is close to the word bokeh itself. It's the bet vav kuf. Many years ago, when we had Rabbi Eisenberg Zatzal as a teacher, he talked about with us that when he was in Krakow, he had a teacher, and the teacher taught that while we have 3-letter root words in Hebrew, that actually every letter of the alphabet has a meaning. And when you take each of those meanings and combine it, that's how you get the word. So there is a 1-letter root, there's a 2-letter root, and there's a 3-letter root word. And unfortunately, this teacher of his was killed in the Shoah. The works that he had was not shared, but Rabbi Eisenberg would talk about it. So when you look at the word bokek, the bet kuf, that word bokek, which means to empty, and the word bokeh, which means to crack, have that same bet kuf piece to it. And that bet kuf, and then bolaka picks up on the bet lamed kuf, but bet kuf as well. There is not only an alliteration here, but there seems to be some connection, says the Dat Mikra as well. And God will do this. He will empty, will destroy the word, ve'iva fanah. And he's going to, according to Rashi, confuse the people who remain on the earth. According to the Dat Mikra, really what he means, ve'ivam, is to change the appearance of things that are on the earth. Whatever is going to happen will just change the appearance. Now, when I was reading this in Lahavdil Elef Havdalot, I was thinking there was an article that was written, and I wasn't happy with the article itself, but there was an article written, one of the papers I was reading, of a journalist who had gone into Gaza with the Israeli army. He was a journalist who used to spend a lot of time in Gaza, before this war. And he went in and he didn't recognize anything that was there. And at one point, he finally asked one of the soldiers, where are we in relationship to this thing that he knew? He said, we're there. Okay. Now, different circumstance, different consequence. But if you think of that level of destruction, this is what the Pasuk is talking. Vehefitz yoshva. And the people are going to be dispersed. Now, according to the Dat Sofrim ultimately says that if I take the approach that this is referring, as Targum Yonatan says, to the exile of the 10 Shvatim, what it means is that those 10 Shvatim, the 10 tribes, are going to be exiled, but then they're going to continue to be exiled and exiled and exiled. So where they are originally taken is not where they're going to be at some later point. That's why we use the word vehefitz. Again, the same shoresh is nafatz, the same shoresh has the word ptsatsa, a bomb, because it scatters in the same way. And The average person will be like a Kohen. Ke'eved kadunav, the servant is going to be like his master. Kashivcha kigvirta, like a maidservant, her master. Kakoneh kemocher, like the one who buys, will be like the merchant. Kemalveh keloveh, the one who borrows, will be like the lender. Kenoshem ka'asher noshe bo, and the one whose money is being collected will be like the one who collects the money. What we're talking about here is, and the Radak says, that the people at this time, there will be no distinction between class. That whether you're at a higher class or a lower class, whether you're on top or on the bottom, everyone is going to be suffering from this in the same exact way. Rav Hirsch says that what's interesting is typically in societies, people of greater prominence, wealth, position, feel that they're going to be safe, that when something happens, they'll figure a way out of it. Well, what's happening now is that because society is being destroyed, because this is this mass destruction, ultimately, what's going to happen is the people who were always relying on their wealth, on their position, well, wealth and position will no longer exist. And so this destruction is unfortunately going to be the great equalizer that everyone is going to be suffering in the same fashion. And again, you can think of many analogies throughout history where the same thing has happened, much of it even in recent history. Tibok haaretz. Tibok haaretz. Well, we had before that same shoresh, in the beginning, Hinei Hashem bokek, to empty. When you have this doubling, tibok will be surely emptying the land. Tibos, and it will be despoiled. Surely everything's going to be taken. Ki Hashem diberet hadavar hazem, because God says that this is going to be happening. This is not just a possibility. The Navi says this is really going to happen. Now, again, tibos, not only is it giving you that sense of immediacy, but it's also saying at the very same time that remember what happened, the precursor. The precursor is that destruction, where people will no longer recognize, where wealth will be destroyed. Well, at that point, people are going to be taking from one another. There's no sense of normal civilized rules. People will be doing whatever they need to do. Yeah.
Excuse me. Back to the question of did this happen? This is much more complete than anything that has ever happened. So the only thing left is Armageddon.
Well, unless if you say that this is not a description of what will occur to the entire world.
It says it right here.
No, it said, well, but you see, it doesn't say necessarily the entire, it could be a section of the world. Now, one of the ways they explain it is haaretz, when we talk about the land, well, it could be the land, or it could be the land of Israel.
But you can't play with words like that.
But we do it. No, we're not playing with words. The reality is if you look elsewhere, okay, when you look elsewhere in Tanakh, there are times where we use the word eretz, like just meaning eretz or haaretz, the land, as a specific. It's got a heya yedi'ah. It has a definitive prefix to it, which means it is the special place. And there are other times where it can be a general place. It's clouded enough in its language that it does allow for the different explanations. And again, remember, Yeshayahu in general, Yeshayahu is talking at a time in history when there is a possibility that the Mashiach is just a generation or two off, Chizkiyahu HaMelech. Okay, it could be that he was talking to a more immediate piece versus a long-term piece. And part of, again, is what's the role of a Navi? If the role of the Navi is to foretell the future exclusively, okay. But if the role of the Navi is trying to impact the people he is speaking to, which is really what the Nevi'im were doing, well, if I'm telling your people something that is in the far distant future, 2,000-3,000 years off, is that really meaningful to the people? If I tell people, even in little things, I tell them, you eat this, it's not going to be good for your health, right? But at the moment, it tastes good. Okay, and don't worry about it. So I'll skip something else later on. Okay, it's all going to work out. We learned in our Gemara yesterday a case of a guy goes ahead and there are 5 guys sitting on a bench. and the sixth guy, a really big guy, shows up on the bench and the bench breaks. Okay. Now, one of the questions in the Gemara was, the guy says, well, it didn't break immediately, and the only difference was it would have broken in 2 hours. Now it broke in 1 hour. And the guy who wants to be charged with breaking the bench, the big guy, he says, well, it was going to break anyways. And the other guy says, no, we would have gotten up before it broke. We always think about what we'll get around it and how we're going to get around those things, no matter what we do. So if the Navi is talking to the people, maybe he's not talking far in the future. But again, Rashi takes that approach of Gog and Magog, and Rashi takes the approach of Gog and Magog very probably because of some of the same issues that are troubling you in the text itself. It seems to describe something that's so extensive and so massive that it's hard to imagine itself.
So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm late. I'm missing something. Hashem destroyed the world before. He did it. Is this through his own actions, or is this through the actions of?
So we'll actually come to, at the end of the parak, if we do get there, at the end of the parak, there's going to be reference once again to the Mabul, okay, to that destruction that occurred. What this seems to be describing, and again, what's also missing, remember in previous psukim, when we were talking about war, we always used God's description as Hashem Tzvakot, okay, Tzvakot, the host of army. We don't find the term Tzvakot here in this entire paragraph. God is never described that way, which is building up why this may be natural disaster, as the Dat Mikra suggests, versus man-made disaster. We don't know. There's a lot we don't know. Avla navla haaretz. Now, avla navla haaretz typically would mean avla, and Rav Hirsch says this. It means like Ava, like mourning. But what do you mean a land is mourning? And so the Mitzudat Zion actually says that this talks about a desolate space. Okay, that the land is desolate. Navla, and it's withered away. Rav Hirsch talks about the word nevela. Nevela normally means like an animal carcass, that every place you find the word nevela, it can refer to people, it can refer to animals, it can refer to inanimate objects as well, that it means some kind of shriveling up. It's associated with something that shrivels. And so avla navla haaretz means, in the simple explanation, the land is desolate and it is withered up meaning from its produce, from its crops. Umlala navla tevel. And he says that it's been cut off, and the tevel, what's a good way of translating tevel? It's earth also, but it's the land. It's the land. How does ArtScroll translate tevel? The world, does he say? World? Land? It says land. Umlalu marom am haaretz. And then it has, I know. So, right. So interestingly, in this pasuk, you have tevel and eretz. They are typically viewed as synonyms, but if you remember, there's no such thing as an absolute synonym. Every synonym has some little difference to it, some little twist to it. And among the Meforshim, there are two Meforshim more contemporary who love to look at these two things. One is the Malbim, if you remember, and the other is Rav Shamshon Hirsch. Rav Hirsch says that when you look at the word eretz means earth. It means the physical world. Tevel, he defines as human society. So the way he would translate this piece, umlala navla tevel, that that society has been withered and cut off. Umlalu merom am haaretz, and the exalted land, and the people of the exalted land were also cut off. He's saying it's two different pieces to it, and there's a distinction. And what the Dat Sofrim adds on is that Dat Sofrim says what we had mentioned about before, that normally the people of the higher levels of society always figure they'll be protected. They have the moats, they have the money, they got whatever they need, they'll be protected. They're also going to be lost. Yeah.
I don't know how to phrase this question. Avla navla haaretz. It sounds like personification of something very physical.
Yeah.
That's
where Hirsch comes.
Add the word Anshe haaretz.
So this is talking about the land, literally the land itself. There is an anthropomorphism here of Avlah Haaretz, according to Rav Hirsch, the land is going to be mourning. Now, we have this idea, anthropomorphication of inanimate objects, Yismechu hashamayim v'tagel haaretz. Okay, that the heavens will rejoice or will be happy, and the land will rejoice. What do you mean the land rejoices? Normally, what it means to us is the land rejoicing is it becomes fruitful, it provides for us, things of that nature. That's the rejoicing. Here, if I say, according to Rav Hirsch, Avlah haaretz, the land is mourning, well, that means the land is destroyed. There's death in the land.
Projecting.
Whatever we're going to call it, we provide. I think it's actually more of an anthropomorphication of try to spell that one, of the land itself. But we continue. V'haaretz chanfa tachat yoshveha. The land was unfaithful because, in place of its not residents, the people who live on it, inhabitants. Thank you. So Rashi brings this fascinating medrash. And the medrash Rashi brings is, after all this destruction, you're going to see sprouts coming up. And you're going to say, oh, there's still hope. Those sprouts are not going to grow to full grain. And then sometimes you'll see stalks of grain and say, oh, I'm going to have some grain. And then you get to it and you see there are no seeds for the grain itself. The land is going to be unfaithful to us, is how Rashi describes it. Ki avru Torot, because they have violated the teachings. Chalfu chok, they've gone over the law. Hefiru brit olam, and they have violated the covenant of the world. Oh, so we have three terminologies for law: Torot, chok, and brit olam. Rav Schwab says Torot is talking about, and this uses actually the Ibn Ezra, is talking about the normal rules of civilized cultures. Normal rules of civilized cultures, you don't have to have any fancy theological things. Don't steal, don't kill, there is government, normal kinds of rules, gone. Chukim, he says the chukim, those are the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach. The 7 Noachite laws, and the reason why those are referred to as chukim, because again, they're coming from a higher source, and the Brit Olam is talking about, they've broken the rules through which God had promised to us never to destroy the world. That things have gotten so bad that what he had promised to us at the time of Noach is not going to happen because we've broken it. How there is a second possibility, Rav Schwab suggests. Torot, he says it's plural. It might be the Torah Shebal Peh and the Torah Shebichtav. The Chukim, those are laws like Masrot and Trumot. Brit Olam is the Brit of vote, the covenant with the forefathers, meaning the first explanation he gives is projecting to the general world. The second explanation he gives is just projecting to the Jewish people. Now, if I take the second, and going back to Barry's objection, I'm not going to let that one alone because it's a good objection. If I take the second and I say this is directed to the Jews, the criticism is directed to the Jews, then it would seem to be the destruction that we're describing is a destruction that is happening to the Jews, which could support the idea that it's specifically talking about something that affected Eretz Yisrael or the Middle East. If I take the approach, it's talking against civilization, well, then I'm talking about a broader problem. The Malbim has a little bit of a variation. The Malbim says Torot is Torah Shebal Peh, Torah Shebichtav. The Chukim is civilized behaviors, the normal rules of civilization. The Brit Olam, he says, is the covenant that we would normally call as the laws of society, of the laws of government. That what the world has violated is not just the Torah, the world has violated as well all normal things. If you go into any culture, civilized culture, you will find those rules. The last two are different. The last two, the second of the third is talking specifically about the idea of rules that govern how people interact with one another. Whereas the third one, according to this approach, is talking about the acceptance of government. If you think about it, when you accept the government, whenever you accept the government, Shmuel Hanavi said this to the Jewish people. you accept a king, that means you're limiting your freedoms. Okay, when I have a government over me, I say that government can say, well, you should have this, but I'm going to do this instead. And so that's what he's talking about. It continues the Navi, Al Kain. Therefore, now we're almost into the last piece. Al Kain Allah ochla aretz. Therefore, a curse will destroy, will consume the world. The Malbim says Allah is a curse. Rashi says actually that it is alam because of oaths that you did not fulfill. And Allah is another word for an oath. It could be a shvuat shav, but it's going to consume the land. Vayeshmu yoshveva, and it will decimate. Yeshmu from the word shemama will decimate the land, the people. Al kain charu yoshvei eretz. Therefore, the people of the land are going to be parched, meaning that they're not going to have anything that they can eat, they can drink. Minishar and nosh mizar, and there are only going to be few people left. Rav Schwab. The few people we'll see how the few people are going to be left. We'll see. Rav Schwab actually puts into his commentary, and he says he's not willing to say this, with any definitive nature, but he says this sounds like nuclear war. He writes it right in his commentary. Now, obviously, if Rav Schwab had lived a generation earlier, he wouldn't know from nuclear war. But when he was giving the shir, he was talking about that level of decimation. Rav Schwab was giving the shir, I think, in the 80s. Okay, and the reality is, if you think about the pictures you see of Hiroshima, okay, you see those kind of pictures, and now superimpose those pictures on this kind of on these words, and they could fit as well. As terrible as trying to picture that as well. From Zion to Yud Gimel, we talk about the reaction of the people. In other words, until now, we've been talking about the destruction of the land. Now we're going to shift to the reaction of the people. And the reaction of the people ultimately is going to be that they're going to have no sense of joy anymore in this world. And so it says, Aval tirosh umlala gafen, okay, that ultimately there's going to be a destruction. Okay, again, Targum Yonatan says there's going to be a mourning over the lack of umlala gafen, over the lack of grapes and over the lack of the vines. Ne'enchu kol simche lev, all of these people who would rejoice, who want to be happy, are going to moan. Now, what's happening here? Umlala, again, it's withering the vine. Interestingly, again, the Metzudat David says what's happening is grape products are gone. The people who used to celebrate with wine, there's nothing for them to celebrate with. According to Rav Schwab, he says, wait a second, if you look at these two descriptions, one is the tirosh and one is the gafen. Okay, the gafen is the vine, actually. The tirosh is the grape. He says it's talking about the mourning is going to come from the grape and the withering of the vine. He says it's talking about, in a poetic style, the mourning of children over the death of parents. The child being the grape. It's very poetic the way he's viewing it. It's much easier on a pshat basis to just say people who wanted to rejoice. There was no longer anything to rejoice with. Shavat mesos tupim, and in fact, you'll hear all of the music is gone. So the sounds of the cymbals are not the what do you think the things you hit, the drums and the timbrels, I think they would call them, were quiet. Chadal shaon alizim, the sounds of those who are rejoicing have stopped. Shavat mesos kinor, the sounds of the string instruments, of the harps, have ceased. All types of rejoicing is over. Bashir lo yishtu yayin. They're no longer going to be able to drink wine for simchas, says the Metzudat David. Instead, they're going to be drinking wine to put away their sorrow. They're going to get themselves drunk. Yemar shechar l'shotav. And the same kind of thing, it's bitter. Bitter will be the wine for those who are drinking it. Shechar is another word in the Tanakh for wine. In rabbinic Hebrew and modern Hebrew, it's referring to beer. Okay, but in the time of Tanakh, shechar was another terminology for wine. Nishbera kiryat tohu. The city, the desolate city is broken. The Maharikra says, what's the desolate city? The desolate city is Yerushalayim. Because a few prakim before, we called it a Kiryah Aliza, back in Perek Chabet. It was the city of rejoicing. Now it's the city of destruction. Okay, we talk about Yerushalayim also as the Kiryah Nemana. It's the faithful city. Now it's the city of nothing. Sugar kol bayit mibo, every home is closed from entering. Now, interestingly, Mitzudat David doesn't say this is talking about Yerushalayim. You see, if I say it's talking about Yerushalayim, I'm again centering the activity on Eretz Yisrael. The Mitzudat David says every city is going to be destroyed. Tzavacha al hayayin b'chutzot. People are shouting, are looking for wine in the streetways. Why are they looking for wine? They want to get drunk. That's the way the Malbim explains it. Okay, the Radak is a little nicer. He says they wanted to use it to rejoice a little bit. Arva kol simcha. Arva in this case it has set, like the sun setting, darkens all rejoicing. Galam esosa aretz. And any kind of happiness has been exiled, has been pushed aside from the land. Nish'ar ba'ir shama. The only thing that's in the city is desolation, destruction. Ushiyah, she'iyah, yukat sha'ar. And the desertion will strike the gates. Now, what does it mean to strike the gates? So Rashi takes a piece that is metaphysical. Rashi says, because the city is destroyed, well, the mazikin, the evil spirits will come and overtake the space. However, another simple possibility in terms of pshat is the city is destroyed, and as a result of it, there's nothing holding people back from going in, going out. There's nothing left in that same sense. This is going to be, it's going to be kicho yiyeh, okay? And what's going to be? B'kerev haaretz b'tochamim, that between the people who remain alive, kinokef zayit ka'olelot im kilav atzir. The people who remain alive are going to be like the last ones on the olive tree, the way they would harvest olives. And I was told that the Arabs still do it the same way. You hit the branches and the olives come down. Okay. Well, you can hit the branches all you want. There's going to be some olives that don't want to come down. There's going to be some that don't want to come down. And so the people, the only ones will be left will be like those few olives, or like the unripe grapes at the end of the harvest, the things that are still left on the vine itself. Hema, now this small group of people in the next couple of psukim is the good news. Okay, which is very strange. You know, sometimes you just hear bad. Let's have a couple of psukim of good before we go back to the bad. Hema, those people, those few, Yisu kolam yaronu, they're going to go ahead and they're going to lift up their voices. They will sing. Bigaon Hashem tzahalu miyam. They're going to sing of the greatness of God, and they will sing from the water. Now, from the sea. What does it mean, this phrase, Gaon Hashem tzahalu miyam? And so if you look at the words for a second, it recalls another point of celebration. Berov goncha taros kamecha, if you remember, okay, we talk about the singing at the time of Az Yashir. We're using some of those strange words that you find in the Az Yashir. The people there are going to go ahead and say that we have to be grateful for God, and now may come the redemption itself. Rav Schwab says it clearly that this is like the sea was a point of redemption from Egypt. These small group of people who remain are going to be of the redemption. Now, one more piece, and I'll take the question. Again, remember, according to the Medrash, by the way, at the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim, only a small portion of the Jews, only a fifth of the Jews left Egypt. The rest had died in the Makat HaChoshech. So even then, there's this sense of a small remnant rejoicing. Yeah.
Does this not imply that there's a miracle of sorts occurring Because if you're comparing it to us Yashir, with the miracle splitting of the Red Sea.
It could be miraculous in the sense that some people survive. You'll see in a moment, we'll have another phrase, which seems to suggest that maybe these people survived because they were far off, or maybe these people were successful in hiding. But with this level of destruction, anyone survives is miraculous in and of itself. It doesn't describe, nowhere in this Nevuah does it say, this will be the miraculous protection God will provide. Doesn't have it. Al kain be'urim kabdu Hashem, and therefore with urim, let's say with light. How does it translate the word urim? Torches. Okay, so the what's great about the art scroll on this art scroll is consistent. Okay, and art scroll uses the terminology of torches. And why does it use the torches? Because it's like they're going with a torchlit parade. Okay, and that's actually the Barbanel takes it clearly in that same way. They're going to be celebrating the end of destruction with this torchlit parade. The Dat Mikra says something really interesting. He suggests that if you look at the rest of the pasuk is Be'iyeh Hayam Shem Hashem Elokei Yisrael. They're also going to be rejoicing in the islands of the sea. And if you think about it for a minute, you want to have some parallelism normally in a pasuk. One side talks about the islands of the sea, and the other side talks about torches. Where's the parallelism for this? And so he takes it in a different approach, and he says, what is Urim? He suggests it's the lands to the east, where the sun comes up, versus the islands of the sea, which are to the west. If you think about it, I'm situated, So valleys, interesting, that's Rashi's explanation. Rashi takes valleys, okay, and Rashi takes that in the same kind of thing, where normally people would try to run away, they're trying to hide in a sense. You don't hide on a mountain, you try to hide as far down as you can on the same kind of thing. So we really don't know perfectly where this is referring to, but we do know that those people who are surviving are going to sing out and praise God. Miknaf haaretz zmirot shamanu, and we're going to hear them from the kanaf haaretz. So kanaf haaretz is an interesting term. It's like the wing of the land. But if you think about it, in English we have the same terminology. I have the wing of a stage. The wing of the stage is the edges, the two parts on the side. So the same thing here. It's going to be from the edge of the earth. Songs will be heard, shamanu, they will hear tzvi l'tzadik, which will say tzvi to the tzaddik. What is tzvi l'tzadik, and what are we talking about here? So the Dat Mikra says that it's as if the land itself is crying, is calling out to God, is singing to God, l'tzvi l'tzadik, to declare the righteousness of God. That what has happened, I'm praising God for what has happened. The earth sees the righteousness and the actions of God. You know, when someone passes away at a levaya, you say tziduk hadin. One of the prayers that are said is the tziduk hadin, and that is the justification of the judgment. Okay, as difficult as it is, we say from a statement of belief, we accept it. Whatever God has done is right. The earth is crying out to do so. That's one possibility. The Radak, however, says that they're going to say, no, this is, the Navi is singing out together with other Nevi'im. And because there's Shamanu, it's in the plural, we've heard. And they're going to be Tzvi l'Tzadik, and they're going to be claiming the beauty of the Tzadikim who have survived. It's going to be praising those few people, those few ololot, the few leftover olives on the tree itself. The tzaddikim who are going to decide this, who are going to survive the destruction. They're going to be praised. Rav Schwab says that actually this is talking about at the time of the Geula, everyone who survives is going to recognize God. So it's almost like saying me. Kanaf haaretz is almost like saying me arba kanfot haaretz, like from the four corners of the world, from all over. You'll be hearing this praising of God. Va'omar, and they'll say razili, razili, oily. But at the very time, they're going to say that my lot is wasted away. Now, Razi, there's a machloket at what it means. Ibn Ezra takes the approach. Razi comes from the word like razon, which is a hunger, a waste. And they're going to say, when they're singing out, at the same time, they're going to say, Razili, Razili, oily, woe unto me. Rashi says, Razi comes from the word secret, the Raz. Now, the Radak explains that ultimately, what's happening is when they're looking around and they're praising God on the one hand, they're going to see the massive destruction on the other hand. And so it's going to be happiness and sadness together. Those two things will come together at the very same time. And so they'll be praising God, or they'll be praising that tzaddikim will survive, but they're going to look around and see what's happened to the world itself. Now, Rashi's approach is based on a principle that they're going to see Razili. Razili means there's going to be two secrets that are going to be revealed to me. One is the secret of destruction, and the other is the secret of redemption. The problem with Rashi's explanation, and this is the Data Mikra notes and a footnote, is the word Raz is not a Hebrew word. The word Raz is a Persian loanword, which means it comes from Persian, from the Persian language. And we only find it in Sefer Daniel, where the Persians have influence, and it's only there, and it's never used in the rest of Tanakh. And so to say that this pasuk in Yeshayahu, which was well before the Persian era, is using a Persian loanword, which means it's a secret, I've had two secrets, is very difficult. And that's why most of the commentaries take the approach that Razi is to waste away. I'm not sure, how does ArtScroll translate it? Waste away. Waste away. How does Sansino translate it, Naomi? This is verse waste away. Any other translations we got here? Barry, which translation are you using? Barry, which translation are you in?
I don't know who it is.
Oh, you have the Miam Loes.
Somebody that knows where.
Yeah, the Miam Loes. So what does he say? How does he translate it?
He says, woe is me, for traitors will betray, a treacherous betrayer will they betray.
No, no, you're getting that later. Before the woe is me.
But I say, this is my secret.
This is my secret. Okay, so he takes the approach of Rashi. Imam Lois takes. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's Rashi. That's Rashi. Not in, okay, yeah. It does mention Persia. How?
Descending from the after the earth to have Persia.
Okay, so what Sansino, I don't, who did the translation, who did this commentary in Sansino? It says in the frontispiece, right? It's by somebody. You got to give him a little bit of credit.
Reverend Dr. I.W. Slotky.
Okay, so Reverend Slotky, what he's saying is, if I can put this prophecy into the time frame of the Persian Empire or after the Persian Empire, then it's able to use Persian in that same sense as one of the outlying countries. Yeah.
I think it's the first time that Rashi brings what we would call a foreign definition for a word that appears in the Torah, because he does it by Alon Bachut. He says that by Alon Bachut is another word by Alon Bachut. And they say that's the name of a place, and he says Alon is another word for in Greek,
yeah,
for another bachut,
another force of mourning.
So alon bachut means, and that's it. In English, we call it an allophone, allo something or other. Right. We borrowed that word as well into English.
Yeah. So the problem again, the problem is that
he does, and he reaches out into other languages, but he says that Hebrew is a source for ki'ilu for other languages as well. We don't use it that way necessarily, perhaps in our time, but
it could be, yeah. Exist. Okay, so no, we can explain Rashi, but it is from a historical perspective, it's a little, yeah, from a historical perspective, it's a little more complicated to say Rashi. Right. And by the way, most of the Meforshim disagree with Rashi on this one. And even if you look at most of the translations, they follow non-Rashi approach, giving credit to Rashi as well. Bogdim bagadu, okay, those who have betrayed, are betrayed, uvege bogdim bagadu, and those who were betrayed, the betrayers have been betrayed as well. This is not a pretty sight of society itself. Ultimately, This is, according to the Gemara in Sanhedrin, says there are 5 times the word Begidah is used, Bet Gimel Dalet, and it's very strange. Why is it 5 times? It's talking about 5 different times of destruction. We're talking about Bavel, Madai, Paras, Yavan, and Edom, Babylonia, Mede, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Those are the 5 times, and this is what we're talking about, and this is the punishment. Pachad v'fachat v'fach. This is such a great alliteration. This is like, my God, it's like you have in Bereshit, one of my favorites. God gedud yigudenu v'hu yagod l'rosh. Okay, you have that alliteration over again. Here you have pachad, which is fear, and pachat, which is a pit, and pach, which is a snare. Okay, it basically means there's going to be one problem after another, It's continued problems. We don't have verbs in here, and I've used this very often as an explanation. When sometimes you don't have necessarily the verbs, you just have the nouns one after the next, and they're missing verbs. It's very much, my best explanation of it is the Wizard of Oz. Lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. Okay. It doesn't say lions are going to eat me and bears are going to maul me and this, but lions and tigers and bears, and draws enough of a picture that you're able to understand it. I don't know how many more years I'm going to be able to use that example, but it really works. Pachad, fear, and pachad, and pit, and snare. Alecha yoshev aretz, it's going to come against you. Vayahanas mikol hapachad, and people are going to run away from the sound, from this frightful sound. Yipola lapachad. Now I'm explaining it. They're going to run away, and you're going to fall into the pit. And then you're going to try to get out of the pit. And then you're going to be trapped in the trap. Because the gates above have opened up. Now think about this. Where else do we have arubot hashamayim? The concept of arubot hashamayim is back at the time of the flood. The heavens have opened up, and it means it's pouring rain, torrential rains. The trouble you're going to have are going to be pouring down on you like torrential rains, but it's not by accident that we use this word that recalls the very first destruction to the world itself. They're going to come down, the Radak says, like those torrential rains. Vayirashu mosdei aretz, and the foundations of the earth are going to shake. Now, this already sounds a little bit like that earthquake concept. Ro'ah hitra'ah ha'aretz. The land is going to be completely broken. Por hitporara eretz. And the land is going to crumble. Perurim are crumbs, like from bread. Okay. Mot hitmoteta eretz. Aretz. And also the land will be tottering. Okay. These are that are all of the problems that are going to come according to the Radak. These are the problems right before Mashiach comes. Okay, there is a natural tendency among the Jewish people, because we do have this concept in rabbinic literature is referred to as Chevlei Mashiach, the labor pains of the Messianic era, that whenever things get really bad, the way we have hope is we say it's the bad before the really good. Okay, and the Radak says this is describing the bad before the really good, before the Mashiach comes. Noah tanua eretz kishikor. The people are going to be walking the land is going to be walking like a drunkard. It's going to be shaking, swaying. V'hitno deda kemaluna, and it's going to shake like a maluna. Maluna is the temporary hut for guards out in the field. Specifically, it's talking about the huts for the people who are watching over the kishuin, over the cucumbers. Okay, it's just going to be shaking back and forth. And again, if you think of earthquake, of natural disaster, all these movements make sense right now, and the destruction makes sense. V'chavad alea pish'ah, the sins are going to be heavy. V'nafla v'lo tosif kum, and things are going to fall and not be able to rise up again. Last piece of the parak. And with this, the pesha are all the sins that the people have committed. Is causing all of this, right? Okay. Therefore, and that what will happen on that day, Yivkod Hashem al tzva hamarom, God is going to command the people, angels above, va'al malchei ha'adama al ha'adama, and over the mortal kings on this earth. What's he going to be commanding them? Yifkod is both a command, and Alim Aforshim says he's going to remember. The angels above, that this goes back to the theological concept that every nation has its malachim. Every nation has the guardian angel. We talk about in the battle of Yaakov and Esav in a couple of weeks, that it was that this was when Yaakov was fighting with the angel, it was the malach of Esav, malachos shel Esav. It was his malach who was fighting. God is going to turn to these malachim who have been protecting those nations who have enslaved us and have caused us all of the damage, and he'll remember it. And he's going to turn to those people and he's going to remember it. It's not just to command. A kudah nowadays means a command in an army, but also Vashem Pakad Tzara, to remember at the same time. Pakad means also to number, if you think about it. When all of those things are ways that we identify, ways that we move towards things. He's going to do that. And he's going to, and that then he's going to do the usfu asefa asir albor, and there will be a gathering of a gathering. He's going to gather a gathering of captives in a pit. According to the Radak, God is going to be punishing the nations of the world for what he did to us. According, the Radak quotes his father, Rabbi Yosef Kimchi, and he says, the Jews are going to be punished at that day. Says Rashi, the pit. Rashi goes with the idea it's the non-Jews, but Rashi says the pit, that's Gehenna. Okay, that's the netherworld. This sugru al masker, they're going to be locked up on merov yamim yipagedu, and only later on, many days later, will they be remembered. The chofra halavana, and the moon will be ashamed, voshar chama, and the sun will be ashamed. Now, what is a sun and a moon getting ashamed? According to the Targum Yonatan, the people who worship the moon, who worship the sun, they're going to be ashamed. They're going to see the error of their ways at that time. According to the Radak, it's because of the troubles of the world, it's going to be as if the light of the sun and the moon have been diminished. According to Rav Schwab, and this is again, one of those more complicated ideas to say, he says in the time of Mashiach, we won't need the light of the sun or the moon because we will have the Or HaShechina. God's light will light us up. Okay, so they're going to be less important. Okay, all of those. Ki malach Hashem tzvakot bar Tzion v'Yerushalayim v'neged zekenav kavod, and all of his elders, because God is going to be on Har Tzion b'Yerushalayim. Now, this is talking about, one more time, of God being enthroned, as if the ultimate, at the end of the ultimate days, people are going to accept and God is the king. V'neged zekenav kavod. Ultimately, it's going to be opposite him are his elders, opposite him are the advisors who are going to be granting the honor that is due to God. At the end of the days, when all this destruction is over, ultimately there will be that hope that arises, that God will be once again placed in the place and honored in the way he should be honored. So what this is all about is we don't know. We have no idea what it's all about. What it's all about is, we can say, destruction, there is destruction, and there's hope. And so just like Rashi, when he talks about, even though we talked about whether we accept it or reject it, the two secrets, the secret of destruction and the secret of Geulah, there's no question this chapter describes it. We just don't know precisely what it's referring to. But we do know that when there are times of trouble, that basically what this is telling us, that there will be hope after that time of trouble. And that's a message that we can take with us every day. We'll stop right here. Next week, we'll have share once again.